time now for our rants and raves, starting with Lylah.
So I have a rave for this incredible New York Times Magazine piece. It's a first-person piece by Josh Owens about what it was like to work for InfoWars and Alex Jones. And it is fascinating, and it is bonkers. And it's worth a read. It's coming out this Sunday, but it's online now. So you can take a look. But it details the things that were made up, the way they chased after stories, trying to confirm or at least flesh out conspiracy theories that
Does he
they
say
all
that
knew
Alex believed that
Yes,
stuff?
it's really detailed. There are a lot of really interesting details. And he worked for InfoWars for a number of years, I'd say close to 5 years.
Wow.
So there's a lot of really fascinating stories there. But it's worth a read.
Can't wait to hit it. All right. Callie.
If people don't know, Alex Jones is the guy who said the Sandy Hook kids were never killed, just so that people put that in context. I'm raving for the New York Times, and then it was pointed out to me by Dan that the Boston Globe, too, is doing a rehaul of its editorial process of presidential candidates. Usually they would appear, go into a special session with a few people. It would be very hush-hush and off the record, and then maybe some of that would be reported on background in other stories coming up. They've changed all that. The New York Times has said they're going to tape it. They're going to have some sections of the taping on their weekly show called The Weekly. And, you know, there's no more in the back room in the dark, and maybe it shows up in other places. Now, how they determine which pieces they'll put on the show, I don't know, but I think it's a good first step with transparency. The Boston Globe is asking its readers what are the questions we should be asking of the presidential candidates that come through. So there's a whole rethinking about the editorial process before these papers get to the point
And they're
of
going to
deciding.
put the interviews available so we can look at the actual...
Which is very helpful.
Yeah,
because, you know, you're going a game. If you're just a normal person, you're not paying attention, then you're like, well, what did Pete Buttigieg say about, you know, whatever. It's nice to go back and have that record. Yeah.
All right, Dan.
I have a rave for Nick Martin, who is a veteran journalist who's starting a new project in January called The Informant. It's going to track racist and hate groups across the country. He's getting a big build-up. This was featured in Brian Stelter's CNN Media newsletter, featured in the Columbia Journalism Review. So a lot of people are very excited about this, and I think the moment is right. People are very concerned about the rise of hate groups in this country. And this is going to be one-stop shopping.
He's going to have to sell this in order to make money.
He will, absolutely.
Because I signed up, and the first things are free, but, you know, he's not going to make it if people
No, he'll have to charge, absolutely. And it'll feature his original reporting, but he's also going to aggregate the best of what's going on elsewhere as well.
Yeah, good. Roy.
I have a rant for Devin Nunez, who, as we know, is the minority leader of the House Intelligence Committee and very present force in the impeachment hearing. And I'm going to be a little more careful than I normally am with these. I'm going to read a bit. I know Beat the Press has previously discussed the so-called slap suit issue in which politicians and other public figures hit news media with big money damage claims if they purchase stories that are critical of them, if they pursue these stories. These are usually nuisance suits, since generally public figures are, like congressmen, are fair game for press criticism, except in cases of malice, according to the law. Nunez, though, has emerged as sort of the king of this kind of suit. This week he claimed $435 million in damages from CNN for a story that quoted sources as saying that Nunez played a role in trying to get Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden and son Hunter Biden. Nunez was directed by the president and Rudy Giuliani, the sources said. CNN gave Nunez a chance to respond for the story, but he did not. So anyway, this and a handful of other cases have led to this amazing situation that since March he has sought $1 billion.
Yeah, because he's got $465,000, I believe, against McClatchy.
McClatchy was the other big one. Then there was one involving Twitter, which is not a classic news organization, of course. But with all of this, it just has gotten to the point where we really need to take notice of it. And my only hope now is that Devin Nunez isn't watching the program right now.
He's suing a fictional cow, isn't he?
Right, it's the Twitter cow.
Yeah. Well, why not?
Well, this is the guy that hid in the bushes. That's just all I want to say. The guy was in the bushes. I just don't understand.
Did he find Sean Spicer there?
I don't know who he was looking for, but he was in the bushes, as you recall.
The sad point is that news organizations need to pay for the lawyers to defend them. So,
Yes.
all right. Well, we've all been praising the New York Times today, but I have another rave tonight from the New York Times. I don't know if you all saw this piece yesterday, but there was a terrorist that was captured in 2002 and held in Guantanamo, and he released yesterday his own sketches about what happened to him in captivity. These are really brutal sketches, hard to watch, but they involved a lot of 83 times he was waterboarded. He was held in these cages. By the way, no one is denying this. And they got some information out of him. But for years, Americans have said, well, we don't torture people and this doesn't happen. But this happened. No one is denying it. And the specifics of it are really, really chilling. He had like 12 or 13 sketches. As I said, he's not a sympathetic character. Yeah. He's still being held, but this is what happened to him.